South Dakota holds more than prairies and monuments. It hides stories carved in stone, whispered through canyons, and buried beneath its quiet plains. From strange geological wonders to ancient carvings and eerie legends of ghosts and lost travelers, the state's landscape feels alive with mystery. Each site reveals a fragment of the past that refuses to stay silent. Music, Thoen Stone. In the quiet hills of western South Dakota, there's a mystery carved into stone that's been puzzling historians and treasure hunters for more than a century. It's called the Thoen Stone, an inscribed sandstone slab that some say holds a lost story of early explorers, gold and tragedy, long before the official Black Hills Gold Rush. The story sounds like something from an old frontier novel, but the more you look at it, the harder it is to tell where fact ends and folklore begins. It started in 1887 when a man named Thoen was digging on Lookout Mountain near the town of Spearfish. While working, he found a weathered sandstone rock with faint writing scratched across its surface. When cleaned, the inscription turned out to be a kind of message written by a man named Ezra Kind, or at least someone claiming to be him. The word said that Kind and 6 others had come to the Black Hills in 1833, decades before any recorded gold expeditions. According to the carving, they had found gold, but their good fortune didn't last. The message ended grimly. "We got all the gold we could carry. Our ponies all got by Indians. I have lost my gun and nothing to eat. And Indians hunted me." If the stone was genuine, it meant that a small group of men had secretly entered the Black Hills 40 years before it was officially open to settlers. At that time, the area was sacred to the Lakota Sioux, and outsiders weren't welcome. No records mention a party of 7 prospectors in 1833, so either the Thoen Stone revealed a hidden chapter of history, or it was a clever hoax made to stir excitement during the later gold rush. For locals in the late 1800s, the discovery was electrifying. Newspapers reported it with excitement, and rumors spread that gold seekers started scouring the hills around Spearfish, hoping to find whatever treasure those long-lost men had uncovered. The story gave the region an air of danger and mystery. Ghosts of early miners, wandering spirits, and a fortune buried somewhere beneath the pine-covered slopes. But skepticism came quickly too. People asked, why would someone in the 1830s, deep in the wilderness, take the time to carve a long message into stone instead of using paper? Why was the English phrased in a modern way instead of how people wrote back then? And how did this message survive the harsh South Dakota winters, lying unnoticed until a man happened to dig it up half a century later? For decades, historians argued about whether the stone could be real. Some experts said it was impossible for anyone to have made such a journey to the Black Hills in 1833, considering how little was mapped and how hostile the environment was. Others argued it was exactly the kind of reckless adventure that small groups of trappers or fortune seekers might have taken without leaving a trace. People pointed out that the handwriting and spelling seemed roughly consistent with the time. Then again, it could have easily been faked by someone clever enough to imitate old writing styles. What made the Thoen Stone stand out was how physical it was. You could hold it, feel the chiseled letters, and imagine a desperate man carving his final words as he realized he wouldn't survive. That kind of tangible mystery is rare. It's not just a story, it's an artifact that sits right on the line between history and legend. Even the name Thoen Stone carries that sense of mystery. Thoen, the man who found it, insisted until his death that it was genuine, not a trick or an invention. Over the years, researchers tried to trace any record of a man named Ezra Kind. They searched journals, census data, and frontier reports, but no solid proof of his existence ever surfaced. Still, a few clues kept the hope alive. There were whispers that some old maps from the 1800s showed unmarked trails through the northern Black Hills, suggesting early visitors. Some even claim to have found old campfire remains and rusted tools in the area, though none were ever tied directly to the supposed 1833 expedition. The mystery deepened when descendants of Louis defended the story with passion. They said their ancestor had no reason to lie and no gain to make up a hoax. The stone, they claimed, was simply an incredible piece of luck, something he stumbled upon while working. Yet skeptics pointed out that the late 1800s were full of tall tales, especially when gold and fame were involved. People forged maps, faked relics, and spun wild stories to attract attention or sell land. It was easy to believe that the Thoen Stone could have been one of those creations. Today, the Thoen Stone is preserved and displayed in Spearfish, still carrying its aura of mystery. You can visit it and see the worn letters for yourself. It's smaller than most people expect, just a rough slab with faint writing, but there's something strangely moving about it. You can't help but lean in close, tracing the grooves with your eyes, wondering about the hand that made them. If it's real, those letters might be the dying message of a forgotten man. If it's fake, it's still a masterpiece of storytelling carved in rock. The surrounding hills haven't lost their atmosphere either. Even with modern roads and houses, the Black Hills have a deep, quiet presence. Pine forest stretching over dark ridges, streams winding through narrow valleys. It's easy to see why people believe treasure might still be hidden out there, standing on Lookout Mountain at sunset. With Spearfish below, you can imagine how it must have looked to a group of weary men nearly 2 centuries ago. The wind carries a dry whisper through the trees, and for a moment, it feels like the past isn't that far away. There's something human about wanting the story to be true. It gives the Black Hills a sense of mystery that can't be measured or tested. Maybe that's the real power of the Thoen Stone. It invites you to choose what you believe. History might demand evidence, but imagination fills in the silence between the facts. Still, there's a part of me that leans toward the possibility that something happened there long before the gold rush. The region was full of fur traders, explorers, and wanderers in the early 1800s. Not all of them kept records or made it home. Maybe one small group did push into the Black Hills, driven by rumors of gold, and maybe they met a tragic end. Whether Ezra ever lived or not, the story he represents feels believable because it fits the spirit of that time. Bold, desperate, and uncertain. Today, the site where the stone was found is peaceful, but not untouched. The area has been developed, and modern life has replaced the rough wilderness that once surrounded it. Yet there's still a rugged beauty to Lookout Mountain. You can hike the trails, see the town spread out below, and if you know the story, it adds another layer to the view. Some locals treat the Thoen Stone as a genuine piece of early history. Others shrug it off as an old hoax. Either way, it's become part of the region's identity, a mystery that gives the place character. The negatives are what you'd expect with time, erosion, fading interest among younger generations, and debates over authenticity that have made some people dismiss it altogether. But the positives still outweigh that. The stone has become a bridge between history and myth, drawing visitors who come not just for proof, but for the feeling of standing somewhere where a legend was born. Whether it's the truth or just a clever tale, the Thoen Stone keeps the spirit of mystery alive in the Black Hills. For me, I don't think it needs to be proved or disproved. Its value isn't in being right or wrong, it's in what it makes us imagine. When you stand in front of that simple carved rock, you're not just looking at sandstone, you're looking at the unknown. And in a world where everything seems explained, that's something worth keeping. Sika Hollow. Deep in the northeastern corner of South Dakota, there's a place where the forest feels different. The air seems heavier, the trees crowd closer, and the quiet has a kind of pulse to it. Locals call it Sika Hollow. And if you ask around, You'll hear stories that go far beyond the natural beauty of the place. For centuries, people have spoken of strange lights, ghostly voices, and a feeling that something ancient is still watching from the trees. It's one of those places where myth and memory blur until you can't tell which came first, the legend or the unease that hangs in the air. Long before settlers arrived, the Dakota Sioux called this area Sika, meaning bad or evil. They believed the streams that ran through the hollow were tainted with blood. Even today, if you catch the light just right, the iron in the water gives it a reddish tint, like something darker has been mixed in. Early stories told of spirits that lived among the trees, especially near the springs and the boggy patches of ground that never seemed to dry. The forest, they said, was a meeting place for the living and the dead. The most famous story is about a young man named Hand, a Dakota warrior who once lived near the hollow. According to legend, he went mad. Some say from grief, others say from the influence of dark spirits, and began killing members of his own tribe. The people were terrified and begged the Great Spirit for help. In response, a powerful shaman named Walking Sam, or in some versions, an ancient spirit of the forest, called down a great flood to cleanse the land. When the waters receded, the valley was left quiet but never the same. It was said that the spirits of those who died still lingered, trapped in the mist and soil. Even now, people who visit Siko Hollow say they can feel that weight. The forest has an uneasy beauty. Tall oaks and birches growing close together, their roots tangled in black earth. On sunny days, it's peaceful and almost glowing with sunlight flickering between the leaves. But once dusk settles in, everything changes. The trees seem to absorb the light instead of reflecting it. Hikers have reported hearing footsteps that match their own, voices whispering their names, and flashes of light deep in the woods. Some describe them as lanterns, others as glowing orbs that drift between the trunks before fading away. Rangers who work the area tend to give calm, practical explanations: swamp gas, reflections, trick lighting through the canopy. And yet, many of them admit that there are parts of the hollow they avoid at night. There's something about the way sound moves there, how it carries too far or not at all, that makes even the most experienced outdoorsman stop and listen twice. Some nights when the fog rolls in, you can't see more than a few feet ahead, and it feels like the forest has closed its doors behind you. When European settlers moved into the area, they heard the native stories and quickly added their own. They called the place Trail of Spirits and spread tales of ghost riders, glowing eyes in the trees, and a woman's voice crying in the wind. In the early 1900s, a few people even claimed to have seen a horse and rider made entirely of mist galloping silently through the hollow before vanishing. Others told of sudden cold spots, of animals refusing to enter certain parts of the woods, and of nights when the trees themselves seemed to whisper. Despite the legends, or maybe because of them, Sika Hollow has become a place where history and the supernatural sit side by side. The park now covers more than 900 acres of forest, streams and wetlands. Trails wind through ravines and over ridges where the moss grows thick and green. In the daylight, it's undeniably beautiful. You can hear birds, the trickle of running water, and the occasional rustle of deer moving through the brush. But even then, there's an odd silence beneath it all, a kind of stillness that never quite goes away. Scientists have tried to explain some of the strange phenomena. The reddish water, they point out, comes from iron deposits in the soil. The ghostly lights might be bioluminescent fungi or methane from decaying plants. And the eerie sounds, that could be the way the hollow shape echoes noise, turning a normal breeze into something that sounds like whispering. Logical, yes, but for many visitors, the feeling of being watched is too strong to ignore. You can explain the science and still feel something you can't name pressing in from the shadows. When I visited, what struck me most was the mood of the place. It's not frightening in the jump scare way. It's quieter than that. Walking along the trail, you start to notice how time feels slower. The air smells of damp earth and pine, and every step sounds too loud. It's easy to understand why the Dakota people treated it with such respect. Sika Holowo doesn't feel evil. It feels aware, like it remembers everything that's happened there. Of course, not everyone believes in the haunted stories. Locals who've grown up nearby say most of the time it's just another park. Kids play, families camp, and the sky at night is clear enough to see every star. Yet those same locals will admit there are certain nights when they'd rather not go near it, especially when fog starts to settle in the valleys. It's one of those contradictions that give the place its power. It's both safe and unsettling, familiar and foreign at the same time. The positives are clear. It's a preserved stretch of wild land where you can experience South Dakota's raw, natural beauty. The trails are well maintained, and there's a sense of peace that's hard to find elsewhere. But the negatives are just as real. The area can flood easily. Insects are thick in summer, and if you stray too far off the trail, the terrain gets rough and confusing. Cell service fades quickly, and the isolation that makes the park peaceful can also make it unnerving. Some visitors have gotten lost, especially after dark when the woods seem to shift around you. Over the years, paranormal groups have visited, bringing cameras and audio recorders, hoping to catch evidence of the unexplained. Some claim they've recorded faint voices or seen light anomalies that couldn't be traced to any source. Others leave with nothing more than muddy shoes and a vague feeling of discomfort. Whether you believe their findings or not, there's no denying the emotional pull the place has. You go in curious and leave thoughtful, maybe even a little humbled. In the end, I think Sika Hollow's mystery survives because it taps into something ancient, a human instinct, that certain places are simply different. Some people say it's haunted, others say it's holy. Maybe it's both. Maybe the land holds memories of everything that's happened there. The way trees hold rings of every passing year, you can walk through it without seeing a single strange thing, and still come out feeling like the forest has been quietly studying. Today, Sika Hollow is protected as a state park. Trails are marked, campsites are available, and families visit every summer. But when the sun dips behind the trees and shadows start to stretch across the water, that old feeling creeps back in. The legends of Hand and the ancient spirits haven't faded. They just wait for the dark to return. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, standing there in the fading light, it's hard to shake the sense that you've stepped into a place where the veil between worlds is thinner than usual. The mystery isn't something you can capture on film. It's something you feel in your bones. And that maybe is what keeps Sika Hollow alive in the imagination of everyone who walks its trails. Music, Spook Light Road. If you drive along the lonely stretch of dirt between Carthage and Fedora, South Dakota, there's a good chance you'll hear about the strange lights that dance along the road at night. Locals call it Spook Light Road, and for decades, it's been one of the state's strangest unsolved mysteries. There's nothing flashy about the place in daylight. It's just a quiet rural road surrounded by flat fields and wind-bent trees. But once darkness falls, things start to change. People have reported glowing orbs, floating lights, and sudden flashes that seem to appear out of nowhere, following cars or drifting slowly through the fog before vanishing without a sound. Stories about the lights go back generations. Farmers working late would spot a glow over the fields and think it was someone with a lantern. When they went to check, there'd be nothing there. Teenagers told tales of being followed by a bouncing ball of light that stayed just ahead of their car. In some versions, the light hovers low to the ground like a lantern carried by an invisible hand. In others, it shoots across the road in an instant, bright enough to light up the trees. Nobody has ever caught it or figured out what it really is. Some say it's the spirit of a man who died searching for his lost bride, still wandering the road with his lantern. Others tell a darker story, that it's the ghost of a railroad worker who lost his head in an accident, doomed to search forever for it with his lamp. A few even claim to see two lights, as if the spirit found what he was looking for. And now the pair walk together. The tales are told quietly, often with a half smile, as if no one wants to sound superstitious. But most who've seen the light say it's real enough to make your skin crawl. What's strange is how consistent the reports are. The light often appears at the same bend in the road between the cornfields. Usually on calm nights when there's little wind, it might glow soft orange one night, then bright white the next. Sometimes it pulses slowly, almost like it's breathing. Drivers who've tried to chase it say no matter how fast they go, the light keeps its distance. Others have tried waiting for it to come closer, only to watch it fade like a candle being snuffed out. Of course, there are logical explanations, and plenty of people have tried to prove them. Some believe it's a trick of headlights bouncing off the hills or the thin layer of dust that hangs over the road at night. Others suggest it could be swamp gas, methane rising from decaying vegetation that ignites when it meets oxygen. But there are no swamps here, and the light sometimes moves in ways that don't fit the science. A few experiments with maps and angles showed that certain distant highways line up with the road, meaning car lights from miles away might create the illusion of a floating orb. It's a neat theory, but those who've seen the light up close say it behaves too intelligently, darting from side to side as if aware of being watched. There's something about the setting that adds to the eeriness. The road cuts through open farmland, where the night sky is wide and empty. Out there, sounds carry far. You can hear your tires crunching on gravel, the wind through the corn, and sometimes nothing at all. When the air cools after sunset, a thin mist often forms over the fields, and that's when the lights are said to appear most often. The stillness, the isolation, and that glow on the horizon, it's a combination that can make even a skeptic start to wonder. Locals have mixed feelings about the legend. Some treat it as a bit of harmless fun, a story to scare friends or test your nerves on a weekend drive. Others take it more seriously. A few older residents claim their parents saw the lights long before cars were common, which rules out headlights as the cause. One man said he remembers riding a horse home late one night and seeing a glowing ball keep pace with him for nearly half a mile before shooting straight up into the sky. He never went down that road again. Scientists, photographers, and paranormal investigators have all come to study the phenomenon. They've set up cameras, drones, and sensors, but the light never appears when expected. A few have caught faint flashes on film, small orbs that appear for a second then vanish, but nothing conclusive. It's as if whatever it is chooses when to show itself. That unpredictability is part of what keeps the mystery alive. You can spend 10 nights on Spook Light Road and see nothing. Then, one night out of nowhere, the fields light up with a floating sphere that makes your heart stop. When I visited, I didn't see the famous light, but I could feel why the stories stick. There's something about being out there in the dark, miles from the nearest town, that sharpens every sense. The moonlight throws long shadows across the road, and the air feels thicker somehow. I found myself glancing over my shoulder more than once, not out of fear exactly, but because the quiet seemed too complete. Whether or not the lights appeared, the feeling that they might was enough to make the experience memorable. The positives of Spook Light Road are easy to name. It's become a small piece of local folklore that connects generations. People come together over it. Teenagers drive out there for the thrill, families visit out of curiosity, and travelers stop by just to see if the stories are true. It keeps a little spark of mystery alive in a state known more for open skies than ghost stories. And in a way, it encourages people to appreciate the dark, to step outside the glow of city lights and remember how vast the night really is. The negatives are more practical. The road isn't well maintained, and some parts can be rough or muddy after rain. Because of its reputation, visitors sometimes block the road or trespass onto private property, which has led to frustration among locals. And while most people mean no harm, there's always the risk of accidents when curious drivers stop suddenly or wander into fields after dark. The mystery draws people in, but the place itself demands respect, both for the land and for those who live nearby. Even with those challenges, the legend of Spook Light Road refuses to fade. The more technology advances, the more people want to test the old stories to measure and capture what earlier generations could only describe. Yet the strange part is that the mystery seems to resist being solved. Every explanation leaves something out, some small detail that doesn't fit neatly into science. Maybe that's the point. Not everything we experience can be boxed up and labeled. Today, Spook Light Road looks almost the same as it always has. Quiet, flat, and empty under a wide South Dakota sky. There are no signs or markers telling you where to stop. Just a dirt track stretching between fields, bordered by low trees, and the endless hum of crickets. It's easy to miss if you're not looking for it. But if you're the kind of person who likes the idea of the unexplained, it's worth a visit. Sit there with your headlights off, let your eyes adjust and wait. You might see nothing at all, or if you're lucky, a soft light might appear in the distance, glowing, moving, and then gone again, leaving you with the uneasy feeling that for a brief moment, something beyond explanation shared the night with you. Music, Devil's Gulch. If you drive through the quiet town of Garretson, South Dakota, you might not guess that one of the most famous outlaw legends of the Old West supposedly unfolded right here. Locals will tell you that Jesse James, the notorious train and bank robber, escaped capture by leaping his horse across a deep, rocky chasm, now called Devil's Gulch. Whether or not that leap ever really happened, the story has been told for more than a century. And standing on that cliff today, it's easy to see why it stuck around. The gulch itself is a rugged, dramatic slice in the earth, carved by Split Rock Creek as it winds through red quartzite rock. The canyon walls rise sharply on both sides, about 20 ft apart, at the narrowest point. And the drop below is a tangle of boulders and rushing water. The sound of the creek echoes through the cut, and there's a tension in the air that makes it easy to imagine a horse charging toward the edge, hooves pounding with a posy close behind. The legend goes back to 1876. Jesse James and his brother Frank had just robbed a bank in Northfield, Minnesota, but things hadn't gone as planned. Townspeople had fought back, and several members of their gang were killed. The James brothers fled west, crossing through Minnesota and into the Dakota Territory. The story says that when they reached Split Rock Creek, the law was closing in. Jesse, unwilling to surrender, spurred his horse toward the ravine and somehow made the impossible jump to the other side. No one can say for sure if it really happened. There's no solid record of Jesse James being in that area, and the earliest versions of the tale don't appear until decades after his death. Still, the story fits the way people like to remember him. Bold, reckless, almost superhuman. That kind of myth has power in small towns, where a touch of legend helps ordinary landscapes feel extraordinary. Devil's Gulch became more than a local landmark. It became a piece of living folklore. Over the years, the story grew. Some said Jesse stopped to rest his horse by the creek, washing away the dust of the chase. Others claimed a farmer nearby saw the whole thing and told his grandchildren, who passed it down as truth. The gap itself was even measured by curious visitors who wanted to see if it was possible. It's about 18 ft across at the narrowest point. For a fast horse, it's technically within range, but still incredibly dangerous. That small chance of it being possible keeps the myth alive. Standing there today, you can walk across a sturdy wooden footbridge that spans the spot where Jesse supposedly jumped. Looking down, the drop seems farther than it probably is. The creek glimmers below, and the air feels cool even in summer. You can hear insects humming and the sound of leaves rustling, but there's a strange quietness too, like the place is holding its breath. Locals say that on some evenings, especially around dusk, the wind funnels through the gulch in a way that sounds almost like galloping hooves. Most people laugh it off, but a few pause and listen a little longer than they mean to. Garretson has leaned into the legend in a gentle, small-town way. There's a city park surrounding the site, complete with walking trails, picnic areas, and signs explaining the Jesse James connection. It's a peaceful place, not overly commercial or flashy. Families visit in the summer, kids run across the bridge, daring each other to look down. Photographers come for the red stone cliffs and the way the light catches on the water. If you didn't know the story, you might just think it's a beautiful spot to stop and stretch your legs. But the atmosphere changes with the season. In the fall, when the leaves start to turn, the gulch takes on a deeper tone. The air gets sharper and shadows settle into the cracks of the rocks. Some visitors say it feels like someone's watching from across the ravine. There have been a few reports of strange lights moving through the trees at night, and even voices that seem to echo from nowhere. Most likely, it's just the acoustics of the canyon playing tricks. But still, people keep coming back to see for themselves. As for the historical side, archaeologists and historians have poked around the story trying to find evidence that ties Jesse James to the area. None of them have found a solid trail. No documents, no camp remnants, no first-hand witnesses, but there were settlers living nearby in the late 1800s who reported seeing riders passing through shortly after the Northfield robbery. That might be where the seed of the legend began. It's entirely possible that outlaws on the run passed through Garrison's hills and creeks, and people simply filled in the blanks with the most famous name they could think of. Personally, I think that's part of what makes Devil's Gulch interesting. Whether or not Jesse ever set foot here, the story has taken on a life of its own. The place feels charged because of the story, not the other way around. The legend gives it meaning, and that meaning shapes how people experience it. When you stand on that edge and look across, you're not just seeing a crack in the rock. You're standing inside a story that's been told for generations. There are positives to that, of course. The town of Garrison has been able to preserve the land around the gulch. Because of the legend, tourism brings in steady visitors, which helps support local businesses. The park is clean, well-kept, and free to explore. It's one of those places where history, myth, and nature blend in a way that feels authentic, not overdone. But there are negatives too. The park's popularity means it's often crowded in summer, and some visitors treat the place like juice. Another photo stop. There's also been erosion along the cliffs from decades of foot traffic. Rangers have had to put up railings and warning signs, which slightly takes away from the raw, wild feeling the gulch used to have. And as with many local legends, the true history of the land, long before Jesse James, often gets overlooked. Native American tribes once traveled these same valleys, leaving traces of their own stories, which deserve just as much attention. Today, Devil's Gulch remains one of South Dakota's most intriguing places to visit. Whether you come for the beauty, the mystery, or just the thrill of standing where an outlaw supposedly made an impossible jump, it has something that stays with you. The red stone glows in the evening sun, the creek hums below, and the wind stirs through the trees in a way that feels almost alive. If you ask me, it doesn't matter much whether the legend is true. What matters is that people keep wondering. That's the real magic of Devil's Gulch. It reminds us that even ordinary landscapes can hold extraordinary stories as long as someone's willing to believe. Lehman Petrified Wood Park. In the small town of Lehman, South Dakota, there's a park that looks like something from another planet. It's filled with stone castles, pyramids, and towers built entirely out of petrified wood, fossils, and ancient stones. Locals call it the Lehman Petrified Wood Park. And while it's a public park, it feels more like a geological museum sculpted by imagination than a tourist stop. It's one of those places that makes you stop, stare, and ask yourself how and why it came to exist in the first place. The story of the park starts with one man, Olai Kwaman. In the 1930s, during the Great Depression, Kwaman had an unusual dream. He wanted to build a monument that showed off the natural beauty and mystery of the region's stones. So with the help of local workers employed through the Works Progress Administration, he began collecting petrified wood, agates, and fossils from the surrounding badlands. What they created still stands today. Over 100 structures built from materials that are millions of years old. When you first walk into the park, the scale of it is surprising. There are towers reaching more than 20 ft high, small bridges arching over walkways, and even a full castle made of petrified logs and chunks of fossilized tree trunks. The colors in the stone are subtle but stunning. Soft browns, reds and grays, with hints of green from lichen. Some of the logs still show bark texture, perfectly preserved from a time when dinosaurs might have walked nearby. Kwaman didn't just stack rocks for decoration. He built with a sense of storytelling. Each structure feels deliberate, like a puzzle piece in a larger mystery. There are pyramids shaped like ancient monuments, circular enclosures that resemble Stonehenge, and even a small museum building with walls made from fossilized coral. When you look closely, you can see shells, leaf imprints, and minerals embedded in the surfaces. Tiny snapshots of prehistoric life frozen in stone. Standing there, it's easy to imagine this place as a kind of time capsule. Every rock tells a story, and every story is from a time long before humans existed. The petrified wood itself comes from trees that lived around 50 million years ago, back when South Dakota was a subtropical swamp filled with giant ferns and sequoia-ike trees. Over time, volcanic ash and minerals seeped into the wood, replacing the organic material with quartz and silica until the trees turned to stone. The result is something that looks like wood but feels like glass. Hard, heavy, and ancient. People sometimes describe the park as mysterious, and not just because of how it looks. There's an odd energy to it. Maybe it's the knowledge that everything around you was once alive millions of years ago. Or maybe it's the eerie quiet that hangs over the park, especially at dusk. Locals say that when the wind picks up, it whistles through the towers and hollows in a way that sounds almost like a voice. Some visitors have even claimed they've heard faint knocking or echoing footsteps when no one else was there. Most likely it's just the sound of air moving through the stone structures. But still, it's unsettling if you're standing there alone. During the day, though, the park is peaceful and oddly beautiful. The sunlight brings out the sparkle in the petrified wood, especially after a light rain when everything glistens. Children run between the towers, climbing on low walls, while older visitors take photos or sit quietly on benches, trying to absorb the strange beauty of the place. It's open year-round, and the best part, it's free. Lemon's residents maintain it with quiet pride, and it feels like a community monument rather than a tourist trap. There's also something oddly human about the park. Built it during one of America's hardest times when jobs were scarce and hope was in short supply. He gave people work, yes, but he also gave them a project that felt meaningful. Imagine spending long days under the sun, hauling tons of petrified wood from nearby fields, knowing you were building something that might outlast you. That sense of purpose is still there in the walls. You can feel it when you touch the stone. From a geological point of view, the park is priceless. Some of the pieces inside it could be museum-quality specimens, and geologists have come from across the country to study the types of petrified wood and fossilized coral used in the construction. But from a preservation perspective, there's a trade-off. Because it's an open park exposed to weather and human contact, the structures are slowly wearing down. Decades of freezing winters, scorching summers, and the touch of countless hands have left cracks and chips. The city has done repairs over the years, but the damage is ongoing. That's one of the negatives of the site. It was built before the idea of long-term preservation became a big concern, and the materials, though ancient, aren't invincible. Some stones are crumbling at the edges, and rainwater has stained parts of the towers. Visitors sometimes climb on structures that weren't meant to bear weight, which adds to the wear. There's also a sense that outside of geology enthusiasts, the park doesn't get the recognition it deserves. Many people driving through South Dakota have no idea it exists. On the positive side, the park remains one of the most unique attractions in the Midwest. It's accessible, peaceful, and open to everyone. It doesn't rely on flashy exhibits or digital screens. It relies on the raw wonder of nature turned to art. There's something grounding about it. Standing among those stone trees, you're reminded how small we are compared to time itself. I've been there once, and what struck me most wasn't the size of the towers, but the silence. The air felt still, and even with cars passing a few blocks away, there was a kind of calm that made you want to whisper. It's the kind of place where you stop thinking about your phone or the time and just stare at the stone patterns, wondering what the world looked like when these trees were alive. It's humbling in the best way. Today, the lemon petrified wood park is both a curiosity and a treasure. It sits right in the heart of town, surrounded by small shops and quiet streets. Locals still tell stories about Wham's dedication and the men who worked alongside him through dust and heat to finish his vision. The park is open 24 hours a day, so anyone can walk through at sunrise or under the stars. At night, when the lights cast long shadows on the stone towers, it feels almost otherworldly. Whether you see it as an art installation, a geological exhibit, or a monument to human creativity, it stands as proof that wonder doesn't have to come from the supernatural. Sometimes the earth itself, old, patient, and full of secrets, is mystery enough.